Just when you think the beach is all about sunbathing and sandcastles, the vast coastlines throw some surprises to make you think twice.
I've stumbled across something weird. This is like one of those things you see when people claim that they found aliens.
Terrifying encounters with swarming marine life.
I was taking a video of her, and all of a sudden she starts running out of the water. She had said she saw a fin coming up out of the water towards her.
Or shadows darting from the depths.
The shark was a real message to me. Something struck me from behind. I'd never been hit like that before. It was pretty jarring. It kind of gave me an instant whiplash.
Let's dive for some of the wildest beach moments.
I'll go back in the water because it's not something that happens every day, and I'll just have to be aware of my surroundings.
Isn't this every fisherman's dream? This happened at Miami Beach in 2014, and let's just say it got quite chaotic. These fishes aren't just being driven out of the waves as we think. They're actually trying to evade a predator, possibly a shark, lurking somewhere close by. Since one shark's feeding can attract other predators to the same area, this school decided to take matters in its own hands and simply swim to the shore. Only it didn't anticipate dozens of hungry seagulls lunging at it. Now that's an out of the frying pan into the fire if I've ever seen one. Gnash and Dash. You'd think a movie about a rogue shark would be just fiction, but one fisherman believes Jaws could turn into reality. Just a mile from Apalachicola Beach, Florida, Baloo Beasley witnessed around 10,000 sharks swimming near the shore, drawn by his shrimp fishing. Since sharks are solitary hunters, they rarely meet to feast, unless you're dangling the equivalent of a buffet in front of them. But the frenzy didn't end with the shrimp. It even approached the surface, where flying seagulls were fooled into becoming shark lunch instead. Seaside slumber. Beachgoers visiting New York's Gilgo Beach discovered a giant basking shark that had washed ashore sometime during the night after passing away. Naturally, most beachgoers were curious at the sight and even examined it, a step most marine researchers would advise skipping. It's possible the shark may have succumbed to some sort of disease and was washed ashore. Some even suggested the shark may have fought a predator. And, well, if something is lurking beneath the waves that can do that to a shark, it's best to stay away. Soot and Hoot. Isn't this a chaotic sight? Seeing sooty shearwaters in such abundance is a dream come true for bird lovers. This flock invaded Sea Cliff State Beach back in 2012, and while it warded off most beachgoers, some ignored all warnings and waded into the water to get a closer look. But why would such a big flock make its way to the shore? While you'll spot a shearwater or two occasionally, it typically swims to feast on forage fish. And these birds are pretty clever too. Sometimes they'll pick up on humpback whale feedings, knowing their feeding habits will panic the fish, bringing them up to the surface. So they can eat without having to poke their beaks in the water to hunt. Salmon Scramble. This must be every seagull's dream. All humans willingly leaving their station, and heaps of salmon serving themselves on a silver platter. Even paddleboarders who had flocked to the Perth beach were driven out. But while we're pretty much impressed with the view, the salmon didn't swim to the shore to become food. They're actually enjoying a feast themselves. Salmon can often move upstream through the waves to feed on smaller fish and bait that might have been left by fishing beachgoers. Of course, nature can have a pretty twisted sense of humor, so these salmon ended up being eaten too. Glimmering Buffet. There's the silver lining you've been waiting for. Oh, wait, never mind. It's just thousands of sardines thrashing the coast in the Philippines. Naturally, fishermen flocked to the ocean to take advantage of this opportunity. But this isn't a feeding frenzy, because sardines are typically on the receiving end of it. In reality, these sardines rush to the surface because of upwelling. Upwelling is like a giant underwater elevator for water. It happens when winds push nutrient-rich waves to the surface, encouraging marine creatures to follow suit. Let's just hope the sardines got their fill before they were stuffed into a can. Bait buffet. Now that's something you don't see every day. What's causing this turmoil? And more importantly, what is that black shadow? Is it proof that monstrous creatures hide in the ocean?
Oh, crazy.
Well, there's still time for that. This is a school of baitfish released by anglers in the area. Only it looks like they're trying to make a run for it. The baitfish might be reacting like this because they're looking for food too. But that's only gonna make things worse for them because it'll be easier for bigger fish to make their way. Last minute save.
Young girl's close encounter with a shark, caught on camera.
Myrtle Beach is a hot spot for sharks, but tourists rarely think about coming across a fin while they're boogie boarding just near the shore. Luckily, this girl was able to spot the fin from a distance and quickly rush to her mom.
I was taking a video of her, and all of a sudden, she starts running out of the water.
Thanks to the girl's quick thinking and great situational awareness, she was able to warn other beachgoers and children as well, saving them from potential trips to the hospital. But let's be glad she's smart enough to recognize it wasn't the shark's fault. Most tourists wouldn't realize they were the ones stepping in on shark territory, but she did, so at least she's being raised right.
I didn't go into that day thinking I was going to be right next to a shark.
Shiver me timbers. Check out this crazy shark feeding frenzy that made it to a North Carolina beach shore.
Dude, can you please send that to Christy?
Since sharks typically stay away from the shore unless they're washed out or are chasing prey, it's quite rare to see an entire shiver come crashing with the waves.
Dude, look at that!
There's only one possible reason. The shore is abundant with food and gives them greater chances of going back home with a full stomach. But unlike these beachgoers, it's best to stay away from such a sight. Sharks become extremely aggressive during feeding, so much that they can even start feasting on each other. A stingy nightmare. A massive fever of stingray made its way to Panama Beach in 2010. But what would prompt an entire fever of stingrays to willingly approach the beach, when we know they generally avoid coming onto land since they can accidentally beach themselves? Well, it's possible the area was just brimming with the exact type of sea life that stingrays love to eat, and they all just swarmed in to get a good bite. It's also possible this happened during breeding seasons. The shallow waters near shores can provide safer environments for mating, and later, the protection of their young. Ocean's Foodies. Well, this is one way to get a fish's attention. You could just scoop up these carps to take home without the hassle of fishing. Carps never skip an opportunity to eat, so they always gather where they'll find lots of food. You could be feeding just one and accidentally summon an entire carp army in minutes. Interestingly, some schools of carps have even recognized that certain areas, like Broadway at Myrtle Beach, bring in hundreds of tourists daily, and that they're all strapped with fish food, eager to give them a share. So sometimes, these carps will even visit docks and shores, waiting for beachgoers to throw food in their direction. Pretty smart, isn't it?
Oh my God!
Avian aftermath.
Hundreds of dead birds mysteriously washed up on a Chilean beach on Sunday.
In May 2023, Chilean Chonga Beach surprised visitors when waves brought along hundreds of birds that had passed away mysteriously, and with no clue of what had happened. Beachgoers informed authorities, who immediately cleared the beach and collected the birds for research.
We received a complaint about a large number of dead birds on Changa Beach in Coquimbo. We asked the public not to be alarmed.
Although you'd think there's no harm in approaching creatures that have long lost their life, most animal carcasses carry harmful bacteria and viruses that can transfer to humans. However, once authorities had cleaned up the beach, they were worried about the cause behind the birds' demise. They suspected the birds suffered from a contagious bird flu virus, which could infect other birds too. Scalefest.
Para vocês que nunca viram jacaré, viu na bileque.
This is nothing short of horror. Just hundreds of fierce reptiles casually claiming the beach. And unlike what we think, this isn't Florida or Australia. It happened on a riverbank in Punted, Brazil. And naturally, it's a frightening sight. We don't know what prompted hundreds of these reptilian nightmares to flock to the beach. Perhaps they wanted a good tan, but considering it could be extremely dangerous to encounter any one of these creatures, villages nearby were cleared out for protection. Shell of a surprise. I think there's a little beach hidden somewhere between these crabs. Seeing red crabs at the beach isn't an unusual sight, since these critters can migrate across the sandy shore. But this one is a little unexpected. This happened in 2015 on a Californian beach, and that's quite unusual because Southern California's hot weather isn't that suitable for them, which is why most of them ended up passing away. But it didn't end there. The crabs were washed ashore due to rising water temperatures, which made it difficult for them to survive and forced them to seek shelter. Only they ended up on the wrong end. Digging up the past.
There was a hole in the sand. Well, turns out what it was is some bones that were found.
Like the rest of the world, one beachcomber hoped to unearth expensive artifacts or maybe even gold coins, but instead ended up digging up ancient bones.
I'm not quite sure why. I mean, it's clearly not a body. It's probably a horse.
Initially, he assumed the remains belonged to a horse, but see here, one of the joints is just a bit too perfect, suggesting either the bones belong to some other creature, or whatever it is, may not have passed naturally. Now that's creepy for sure.
Got a completely straight cut, then a step down, and another flat surface.
Blubber balloon. This giant whale washed ashore at Juhu Beach in India a couple of years ago and became a tourist attraction within a few minutes. Judging by its looks, the whale had long passed away. But that isn't the usual part. The real catch is this whale washing ashore abruptly at night, which rarely happens unless there's a bigger predator involved. And that seems to be the mystery. Indian waters aren't really known to have, well, any other creatures that are larger than life, or whales. So what caused this poor creature to end up like this is beyond us. Indian authorities collected the carcass to conduct research, but they've been quite mum about it ever since. Now that's suspicious. Punted to oblivion. Great white sharks, one of the fiercest predators to exist, until they come across nature's most ruthless creatures, orcas. And that's when they instantly become prey. One such encounter was filmed just a few days ago off the coast of South Africa. One great white found itself facing an angry, solitary orca, which wasn't letting up. The duo's tussle made it on air, and while the great white tried its best to fend off the tackle, the orca won the game by punting the great white into the air. Now that's not only an impressive move, but one that required sheer force, and gave the shark a big lesson. There's always bigger fish in the sea. Cranium Coast. This giant skull was discovered by beachgoers a few years ago at Flagler Beach. And while we can instantly guess it belongs to a whale, it raises a lot more questions than answers. Firstly, how did the whale pass away? Most whales will wash ashore, but just a skull? Now that's creepy. Secondly, where's the rest of the whale? Did the rest of the carcass move somewhere? Well, how? Well, we can only guess. It's obvious the skull was picked clean by smaller scavengers and animals, but it's certainly odd seeing a lone skull like this. Hook, line, and sinker. Well, this is definitely every diver's nightmare. This shark was filmed floating somewhere in Australian waters. And while that's terrifying enough, this is one of the few times the shark wouldn't be able to tackle you. See, for a second, the shark looked almost unreal. But that's because the poor guy's in shock from its recent encounter, probably with a scuba diver or a fisherman who defended themselves with a hook. Although we can't imagine how ghastly it must have been for the hook-bearing person, it's pitiable to see one of the ocean's biggest predators reduced to such a sad state. Bone of Thi Mystery. Back in 2019, Scott Ludden was out boating when he spotted something odd sticking out of the sand on Little Talbot Island near Jacksonville. Initially assuming it was just a palm tree, Ludden pulled at it, only to discover it was a bone, one that was a little short of 14 feet long. He contacted archaeologists and local authorities, who immediately got to work. Transporting the bone wasn't the easiest of tasks, and more than 6 men had to join in to carry it safely from the shore. Researchers suggest the bone was part of a jawbone, possibly belonging to an endangered right whale. and are actively learning about the species to preserve it. Last shark standing. In 2019, a free diver discovered a lifeless shark on the ocean bed. Sharks are one of the few marine creatures that sink to the bottom of the ocean when they're close to passing away, so it wasn't that unusual coming across in this state. But since a sunken shark is typically a meal for scavengers and even other sharks, the diver wondered why it hadn't attracted any hungry creatures yet. That's when he approached the shark, and unexpectedly, the shark stirred and started swimming. Now that's bizarre. I mean, was the shark faking it the entire time? Or was it just too tired to swim around? Well, whatever the reason, it's certainly a habit we've yet to explore. History never forgets. In January 2024, rising waves brought up human remains, scattering them along the coast.
They first showed up, according to my father, he said it was around 1950. I have no idea how many there was originally, but this could be a large burial site, we don't know.
When beachgoers discovered it, they immediately alerted authorities who began investigating. But little did they know, it would take them back centuries. Local son and father duo Rodney and Joey have been seeking these remains for a while now, but they've always silently buried them back, hoping for peace.
You know, like these people were uncovered and they needed to be reburied, and you couldn't just let them go.
Now, however, authorities believe the remains belong to passengers aboard a ship that got lost at sea somewhere around the 1800s. Although it's still a cold case, they're actively looking into finally solving it. Marine clean sweep. What you're seeing here is a whale carcass, but one that's been remarkably picked clean. It isn't unusual for whale carcasses to float to the surface. When whales pass away, their body fills up with gas, causing them to balloon and rise to the surface. Typically, seeing a whale carcass is a messy ordeal, but here, it's taken a different approach. Although it's natural for whales to rise after passing away, we may actually be behind the demise of this one. Its tail seems to be entangled with plastic containers, which would have forced it to the beach and remained there until it passed away. Suntan Reptilian.
A crocodile has made a surprise appearance on a Bali beach.
Tourists visiting Padma Beach in Bali had to quickly scrap their vacation plans after a crocodile sauntered its way to the shore. That's when authorities swiftly approached the scene and tried to apprehend the reptile. But the bigger question is, how did the croc make its way to the beach? Well, it turns out the croc was being kept in an enclosure some miles away from the beach. During one of its feeding times, the croc's owner must have left the enclosure unlocked by accident, and the croc made a break for it, and ended up on the beach with a little help from some strong winds.
Beachgoers were evacuated and the unwelcome guest was captured.
Board meets Takeover.
It's like the dragon in Game of Thrones, bro, I swear to God.
Imagine telling your friends you didn't surf because a couple of seals drove you off. Embarrassing. But that's exactly what's going on with Hawaiian surfer Albie Layer and his friend Kane Daly. And although they made their way back to the shore, the story's much scarier than we'd think. When the seals initially tackle Layer and Daly, they both assumed they'd encounter a shark.
A huge black shape goes, boom, it hits my leg. Like, I look underneath and there's just a big shape circling to face me. I was like, shark!
And yes, that is quite terrifying. But you definitely don't want to cross an angry seal. It seems the seals simply wanted to get rid of the people invading their territory. Or the duo was having some fun, if you know what I mean, and just didn't want to be disturbed. Cosmic Handshake.
Tinha as 3 pontinhas do dedo pra cima.
A couple, while strolling along the beach, saw a weird skeleton-like object protruding from the sand. They decided to clear away the sand, only to find this hand-like appendage looking back at them. Naturally, the duo were terrified, but they believed they'd unearthed alien remains because the hand looked nothing like a human's. So they smartly left their discovery back in the sand. But once they uploaded the video, they did find some answers. Although it looks like something belonging to E.T., the skeletal hand may belong to a beluga whale, which hides hand-like digits underneath all that blubber. But I suppose it could still be proof of alien life. Accidental appetizer. If you ever spot a tarpon mysteriously beached on the shore, look around before you try to rescue it. These beachgoers were eager to save the tarpon and return it to the waves. Maybe they assumed it had accidentally beached itself, so they did what any good Samaritan would do, roll it back into the ocean, hoping they'd save the day. The only problem was, that tarpon was trying to escape a shark leering nearby, and these beachgoers practically tossed the tarpon right into the shark's mouth. Well, nature won't wait for anyone, so that was expected. I bet those folks feel pretty stupid now. But the worst part is that they're Floridians. Aren't they supposed to know what goes on in the ocean? Bursting anomaly. Whoa! Who knew the ocean could explode like that? Seriously, as amazing as it looks, what is that? Well, that's the thing. We don't know. Some suggested it may be a group of manatees. These sea cows can be pretty aggressive when they want to, but for that to happen, there should be some sort of disruption above. Seeing that there's nothing there, it could be some sort of mysterious creature. How hard is it to believe something spooky lurks beneath the waves when we've got threats like sharks? Slow and steady. Who needs to watch animal documentaries when you've got a live view? One beachgoer in Australia captured an incredibly rare match, one between a turtle and a tiger shark. And it doesn't even end the way you'd expect. The tiger shark suddenly emerged from the depths and crashed to the shore, eagerly chasing a turtle. Although it took just an instant for the tiger shark to regain its composure, the turtle had vanished from view, and it's all on purpose. You see, we think animals aren't smart, but the turtle approached the beach on purpose, knowing the sudden collision would slow down the tiger shark. That's when it exited in the opposite direction and evaded the predator. Doomed till the end. In 2016, researchers discovered a small minke whale carcass in Cape Cod Bay off North Truro. The minke whale had been surprisingly intact, suggesting it may have passed away from natural causes. Assuming it would just sink into the ocean, the team left it alone. After just a few hours, they stumbled upon the same carcass, but this time, it looked strikingly different. The carcass had been ravaged by hungry scavengers and even sharks, who were slowly returning to feast on it. At this point, the team knew it wasn't going to sink to the ocean, and instead could make its way onto the beach, which it did several days later, but not as recognizable as it did before. Beasts from the past. Don't believe dragons exist? Well, take a look at this. That's right, this is supposedly a dragon skull, discovered by a beachcomber. Although extremely fragile, the skull was remarkably intact. Almost instantly, people were trying to figure out what it truly was. Some suggested it could belong to a particular reptile, while others said it could belong to a baby alligator gar, but we've yet to uncover the truth. So what do you think? Did a myth come to life? Or just a regular reminder of nature? Wave of worry.
Shocked swimmers had a close encounter with a group of orcas off of Quadra Island.
Orcas don't make it to the surface unless they've spotted prey, so it's best to make a run for it when you see 2 or 3 of them casually approaching the beach, and that's what's happening here. This is a mature female orca teaching a younger female orca how to beach itself for future hunts.
I've never seen something so amazing!
Well, that just made the entire sight much, much scarier. No wonder the people are making a run for it.
Oh my God!
Leathered end. That looks like someone left their raincoat. Oh, wait, what is that? This poor creature looks like a bat ray. And that alone should tell you how rare this sight is. Although bat rays frequently visit bays, they typically avoid open shorelines because it's incredibly difficult for them to get back into the water. It's possible this bat ray accidentally beached itself. Maybe it got caught in a tide pool, but it almost looks like this marine creature encountered a bigger predator, which would explain the rather unappealing absence of some portion of its body. Ripped in half.
We're gonna go out there, we're gonna see what we get today, man.
A group of kayakers fishing hooked a 4-foot black-tip shark. Naturally, the trio couldn't contain their excitement and didn't believe they'd hooked something this great. But just as they were getting ready to release the shark, something lunged at their fishing line. and almost pulled one of the kayakers in. And here's what they found. Their majestic capture eaten in half.
Oh yeah! Oh my god! Oh yeah!
The culprit? A giant bull shark. Since their fishing line was still entangled with the blacktip shark, they tried to regain control, but before they could even realize it, their prized collection and part of their fishing line had disappeared into the ocean.
That was a crazy day out there, man. Saw something I'd never seen before.
See Burial Saga. A photographer, while hiking along the Lost Coast, discovered the carcass of a juvenile salmon shark. Since the Lost Coast is fairly isolated from human population, it wasn't unnatural for him to witness numerous animal carcasses along the trail. But a salmon shark? And that too in this condition? It's certainly unusual to see. He checked out the carcass for a few minutes, trying to figure out its demise. It's possible the salmon shark was picked up by a hungry hawk or a similar predator, but what might have caused it to drop its meal and abandon it entirely is a mystery we've yet to reveal. Scale care routine. In 2022, it wasn't just a couple of beachgoers who visited North Myrtle Beach on their day off. An alligator joined them too. This 5-foot alligator was wading in a tide pool, much to draw the attention of visitors who couldn't help themselves and stepped closer to observe. Luckily, the gator didn't feel threatened, so it remained calm.
Oh, alligator in the water in Myrtle Beach.
But beachgoers alerted authorities, who rushed to the scene. Capturing the gator wasn't the easiest task, since it irked the reptile and it even demonstrated its infamous signature move. If the gator wasn't bound by the catch-all pole, it would have given those wildlife rescuers a limb or two to worry about. Summoning the devil. While most of us do everything possible to avoid encountering a seagull, this beachgoer is eagerly handing off her leftovers to the bird. And of course, that summoned an entire seagull army. The flock looks like it's ready to fight for every morsel. Seagulls are pretty used to human interaction, and they can be pretty aggressive, especially when they're competing over food. This kid's lucky the seagulls were too busy with the flying pizza slices to care about him, but it could have gone the wrong way. Well, at least he's brave. Expensive karma. One Hawaiian lady dove into the water and tried to approach the monk seal despite warnings from local authorities. Naturally, the mother seal took the tourist's presence about as well as you'd expect. It approached her, initially only giving out a few warning splashes before trying to lunge at her. The tourist finally realized she was in grave danger and escaped safely to the beach. Since monk seals are critically endangered, any attempts to scare them off or touch them is met with some serious consequences. One can be charged up to a few $1,000s, just like this tourist, who left with a hefty fine slapped on her wrist. Jaws. That's about the right reaction. Scream and run back to the shore when you see a shark. This juvenile shark swam up with the waves at a Jersey shore and naturally brought a few visitors to the scene. Weirdly enough, the kids were smart enough to back down. The adults, well, not so much. One woman got close enough to spook the shark, which whipped its body at her, catching her off guard and causing her to fall backwards. Everyone remained safe, but it's proof that in a room full of smart people, there's at least one idiot to bring the whole thing down. Archaeologist's conundrum.
Behind me, over here, I have the mammoth leg bone, which is that massive bone right there.
Henry Sadler, an average middle school teacher, became a celebrity overnight when he struck something hard while driving in a river in Florida. Knowing whatever he'd caught was unusual, Sadler immediately beckoned a few divers and eventually alerted the authorities. He discovered a giant bone, presumably a massive humerus belonging to an ancient creature.
It's still quite large.
The bone was transported to a research facility where analysis revealed it belonged to a Columbian mammoth, which walked the earth a little over 1 million years ago. Well, at least Sadler had a great story to tell when the school reopened after summer vacations.
Find something in this condition, in this size, is pretty awesome.
Open discussion. Would you look at that? Hundreds of sardines just willingly throwing themselves your way. It's a breakfast buffet. But if you ever spot sardines willingly leaping out of the water, it's best to get out of there. Massive sardine breachings typically happen when there's a bigger predator like a shark lurking around. When this happens, sardines will purposefully eject themselves out of the water, hoping to momentarily confuse the predator and escape. But since this may happen at the beach, it puts most tourists at risk of encountering the predator. Now that's a good strategy. You don't have to run away from a predator, just run the fastest. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to not miss any of the upcoming amazing videos. Thank you once again.